What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about immigration and in particularly the southern border issue. Because in lieu of the Biden executive order last week going into effect, and just the elections and in general, and how immigration has basically become the most important issue apparently for people in the United States in relation to the election. I decided that let's talk about this. Let's look at the border. Let's talk about it. Let's go talk about what's going on there, what's been going on there, um, and what's, in my opinion, the real reasons behind it, and what's going on with the executive order, um, why and how that come about, and even updating on what effect that has made so far in the past week that it's been activated, um, and then just talk about you know um, just my general thoughts on the whole conversation. So, um, if we are thinking about we're talking about immigration, this has been an issue for American citizens for decades now, especially when it comes to elections, um, and just the idea of people just coming, people coming constantly to the United States, the big, illegal versus illegal thing, um, jobs, taken and stuff like that. Just having all kinds of people here that we don't, like, uh, we there's this belief that we just don't, we just don't know where they are. They're just all around, and they're taking our jobs, and they're taking free money and just living off of us. Um, and we just can't have that. And because we don't want to become a country of immigrants, right? I mean, because you know we hmm, thought, anyways. So yeah. So this has been an issue. This has been a big issue, especially for Republicans and Democrats alike. Actually, it's pretty much a bipartisan issue for the most part. Although the big separation tends to be on how to handle it. The concern is always there for just massive influxes of people coming over the border, um, and how to deal with that. Um, and do we have closed borders? Do we have open borders and all that kind of stuff? So um, that's been an issue for decades, especially when it comes to election time. That's an issue that is often brought up and often politicized by both the Republican nominee and Democratic nominees, and who can make the best argument for how they're going to fix it, um, and gain you know the American people's support for it. Um, so, but what is really, I mean, what is really the issue that here? What's going on? So we've always had immigration, right? Um, we are known. It's just been always been a big thing. We are known as the United Nations, land of the free, the American dream, all this good, all this stuff that we've promoted and promoted for decades and decades and decades. So we've always had immigration, people coming from all over the place to try to gain and get a grasp or hold or experience that American dream. Um, and I find it funny that we have always promoted that, but yet when it comes to actually people coming here in the immigration, you know, thing, it seems to always be an issue. Um, Now, for some, the issue is not immigration, just like people coming here. For some, it is just simply coming here legally versus coming in illegally. But for a lot of people, it is just straight up just coming here and all together. Um, and for a lot of those, it also just depends on what color skin you have, or uh, how you can contribute to society. What kind of status do you have? Um, that's really what it all a lot of times comes down to with a lot of people. Um, but So immigration has always been a big thing. Um, we've always had spikes. I think from what I understand, most of the time we have, for some reason, around November and December of almost every year, there's a spike. And then also through the summer months, into spring, uh, oftentimes we have spikes for a couple months. Um, so that, it's basically a wave kind of thing usually, but in between that, usually the numbers are fairly low. Um, and But over the past 3 years, we have had a major um, influx of people coming to the border from several countries, mostly all um, Latin American countries and stuff, but others as well. And then there's been a big problem in this, which is always a problem, but in this time particularly, there's been a lot of issues along with that that've come along with that, with trafficking, and violence, and people being taken advantage of and everything else in this whole process of people coming over, or coming to the borders to come over. While there are some major concerns with that, and things that need to be implemented, and things that have little by little been implemented to try to help with that to some degree, although it's very minimal. Um, uh, that for me is an issue and needs to be addressed some kind of way, um, in combination between us, Mexico, and even these other countries. Um, but uh, the question needs to be asked, why? A question that's often not asked. There's always the concerns always with, that just people are coming over, they're taking our jobs, they're doing all this, blah, blah, blah. But the question that needs to be asked is, why are they coming? Okay? Why are we always having people come? What reasons, what is oftentimes not thought, what would make somebody take such a uh, potentially dangerous journey, um, overland, in some cases, hundreds, thousands of miles, to come to our borders, to come into our country. Like, what drives them? Because I mean, I don't know about you, but most people, most people don't just leave their homes unless something major is, causing them, whether it's some type of financial opportunity, or for family, or trying, or just trying to escape something, um, trying to get away from something that has put them in danger, or or whatever, scared for their life or whatever the case. Those are the main reasons why people would do that, or would just, you know pack up and leave and go somewhere else. Um, and when you look a lot of these countries, especially down in Latin America and stuff, there's been over years and years, um, U.S. policy with sanctions and overthrows of governments, and all kinds of things that we have caused, with the war on drugs, and everything else over the years, that have caused just major um, economic issues, political issues, and everything else in these countries that have caused uh, violence and uh, groups of people, dangerous groups of people and stuff, to gain power and cause all these issues where people are feared for their life and feel like they've got to get out if they can, and if they actually do get out alive and they come here. We have helped instigate and cause those issues in many of these countries, um, for our own political ploys and agendas. Um, so we create this issue that pressures people to come here, or pressures people to leave their countries. And I mean, where else are they going to go? They're going to go for the best opportunity they possibly can, and that's coming to our borders. So that's part of the problem. That's the biggest problem. It has been the biggest problem, part of the problem for decades now. On top of the fact of um, climate change, um, which is starting to cause a lot of immigration issues all across the world, and is going to continue to cause more and more immigration issues across the world as places start to become harder and harder to be, inhabited, harder to live on, and so that's going to cause, mass migrations all across the world. So we're not the only ones going to be hit by this. Um, and then, of course, the most recent issue that has caused the problem is the pandemic, COVID-19, and since COVID-19, that's what has really caused a major influx of migration happening, since 2020 and to now, is people constantly getting away. Because, for starters, during the pandemic, you had areas, people trying to leave those areas because they were, understaffed, unable to take care of people, overloaded in the hospitals. They weren't getting access to the, the immunization or the vaccine shot, vaccines and stuff like that. Like we were, we there was, priority on the vaccine shots with a lot of your major countries, and then all the minor countries, they were on hold or they couldn't get them, and it was, took a while for them to even to get those kinds of things to try to help people to relieve that virus and people getting sick and everything else. So you had a lot of people trying to leave, trying to get out. Didn't want to stay where they were because they had no help there. So they were trying to go to the best place they think could get help, and that's us. So that's one reason why we have had such a major amount of people coming to the United States, to our borders and stuff. And then even once the pandemic was over, you still have a lot of people, regulations and things that even those countries were putting in place and stuff. A lot of those countries, even though we may have gotten sort of back going fairly well, after a few years, a lot of places were still having a lot of issues and did not get going as well. And so you still have people trying to flee to get to a better area for, a better place, on top of all the other, previously stated issues before that, that I've stated before. All that's just stacked on top of each other in these places. talking about, from Venezuela, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, all these countries all throughout in America and everything. Um, that's where a lot of these immigrants are coming from. Um, and and we've caused, from us causing problems to, uh, the rise of let's just say bad people in those areas, and then disease and, you know pandemic issues, has caused a major influx over the past 3 years of people coming here and steadily coming. Um, so that's the big issues, and that's the main sources, and those are the things that should be what we really should be focusing on, trying to find solutions to. But to find like long term solutions to, fixing it to, trying to help and fix it to where people don't have to leave their homes and and their countries to come here, to incentivize them to stay there, by them actually having a way to live and prosper there. That would help. But instead, we want to concern ourselves with just taking care of the border and doing what we can to keep them out. Um, so, um, because of the issue during the pandemic, in the Trump era, we had the big major, policy that was put into place was Title 42. So that meant that during the pandemic, because of the pandemic, we could basically turn everyone away. Um, because for one, our detention centers and stuff, holding centers, along the border, not only could not hold the amount of people that were coming, but they couldn't hold the amount of people stacked on top of each other, plus a pandemic going on. Sick people and the spread of COVID-19, and going through those centers. So the idea was to just completely, the borders are closed. You can't come. Anybody that was attempting to come over through the border was turned away. Coming across illegal was sent back to Mexico, and with very few being able to actually stay, and that was probably limited to uh, unaccompanied minors or something like that. Um, because who wants to really turn away a child? Um, and even in some cases, I'm pretty sure that even happened. Um, that was put into place for that. And then when the power changed over to Biden, automatically you had everybody screaming that, oh, now we have open borders, everybody's coming across, and it's just this flood of people, and then we can't stop them. When in actuality, Biden kept in place Title 42, up until May of last year. So May of 2023, Title 42 was still actually implemented and in place. So they were still able to turn away people, and send people back, which they did. In actuality, Biden has actually deported and sent back more people during this presidential period than Trump did in his presidential period. Now, you can argue that that's because we have had actually a way more amount of people come over the border, but nevertheless, that is the case. So much like Obama before Trump, who was known as the porter in chief, Biden has been pretty much the exact same, if not worse, or like more. The deporter in chief 2.0. So the argument has been that we just have open borders because people are seeing that there's so many people trying to come across the border, and we just, we just can't control them. They're just coming right, and they're just coming across the border, and they're just going all wild up into the United States, and we have no control over them. And while there have been quite a few released into the United States, those that could, had legitimate reasons to seek asylum, in fear of um their home place, for different reasons and whatnot, they were allowed to be released into the United States, because that is our policies. You can seek asylum. Asylum seekers are allowed to stay. We're not, uh, legally, or however you want to look at it. We're not we have we give asylum seekers a freedom to be here and to go through, um, the asylum process, um, to get their day in court or whatever, to prove their asylum reasons and stuff, to actually have a pathway to come in and legally and whatnot, through the system, to become this, to live here. Um, so we can't technically turn them away. So that has to, so they are released and they're given, a date to show up. But the problem, because of the influx of people coming, is it's been so high, those um those court dates and those amount of people, um is backlogged our system, um by months and months and months, because there's just more people, too many people coming, seeking asylum, than the border courts and stuff can handle processing those people through, and determining whether or not they can stay or they have to go back or whatever. That's just too much. So the backlog, has been created over these years, is just months backlogged, and so they're able to stay longer than what they typically would have been. Um, and that's a problem, right? I mean, but it's not a problem that they're, for me, that they are here. It's a problem that our system is not, our infrastructure is not set up properly enough for us to actually process them through correctly, and keep this going. Um, it's just not. So if we were to actually just, um, double and triple up or whatever um, on judges and court dates and stuff like that, to try to, hyper speed these things through, so that we can determine who can stay and who can't, and and get that log down. um that's more efficient, in my opinion, than just arguing for everything to close, and for us to just not allow anybody in, or whatever the case, or you know all these extreme measures being taken by, like, local authorities, um, that are turning out to be dangerous and deadly and everything else, because like the Texas governor implementing, um, razor wires and stuff over water crossings and things like that, where people have died and whatnot trying to cross through and didn't know they were there or whatever. I mean, things like that. That has turned into a whole debacle between federal and state, and whether they have the authority for that and whatnot. Because from my understanding, the border is a federal issue. It's supposed to be handled by federal officials, and the states are just to, the local enforcements can assist in their jurisdictions if asked and whatnot, but it's there's not supposed to be, like, things implemented like that by the state to handle the border. Um, but whatever. We're gonna ignore that for now. Um, so we have loads and loads of people coming through, and it's backlogging. Um, so this has been going on now, like I said, for several years. Um, and while there has been um, like coordination done with Mexico, and Mexico has gotten a little bit more stringent on those coming from other countries other than Mexico that are crossing through Mexico. They themselves have even implemented a lot of things and pushed people back. But still, we have a lot of people getting to the border, and and most of that is by people smuggling, or and cartels and stuff actually, um, because what a lot of is happening, you have these cartels that are shipping people to the border. They're charging people and trying to take advantage of them. And in an instance where they can't back out or anything, or their lives are at stake basically. I mean, so it's like, I'll get you to the border, but you have to pay this or else you're dead. I mean, whatever. So they force them to the border just for money, to take advantage of them, of the situation, and that's something that's constantly going on. Also, just and then of course smuggling over the border. Um, um, and and there's even corporations that apparently have been tied to doing that, smuggling people over the border for work reasons and stuff. Um, and I believe that some of those have been sanctioned, um, and whatnot by the Biden administration. There's a few of them that's been done that way. Um, but ultimately, this comes up to the past couple months. Um, so just be clear: the borders are not open. All right. Um, Title 42 was held in place up until May of last year. Biden continued to build wall that Trump had already started, and the funds were there and the projects were already there, and he continued to allow those to go through. So continued border building, wall building has happened all through this administration. So all pretty much all of the policies and stuff that Trump had going on have continued through the majority of Biden's administration. So the argument of open borders and that, he just taking away everything, and people were just coming over, it's like this imagination that people were just pouring over, and we like our border patrol and ICE agents are just standing out, across the border with little confetti cannons, blowing them off, like, yes, yes, come on in here, woohoo, congratulations, you made it to America. And like, there's no resistance, and that's just comical. It's there's no, it's not happening. It's just not happening. Um, you have to, and you have to think through. A lot of times we think that there's just constantly people coming, like they're different people coming too every time, and that's something that I've thought about recently. It's like, it's like, you think of all these, you hear about thousands of people coming across every day, and you think, okay, there's just thousands of people coming over, and even ones and then we're sending some back, right? But we just got more coming. It's more coming. It's like this, just constantly people coming. Like there's just this caravan of constant people coming for months and months and months and months and months and months. When actually in reality, more than likely, you probably have the same people trying to come across. Or even if they are different, like the same people coming, maybe even in different times. They attempt to come across. We deport them, send them back over to Mexico, and then they attempt again. Or you might have another group come, and then they attempt, and we send them back within that first group that they come across. They try to, there's probably people, the same people probably are oftentimes trying to come back across illegally, and we're just constantly sending back same people back. Um, or is that, people are that are sitting in Mexico waiting to come across legally, and they get frustrated, um, whether it's because they're waiting, to come and to get through legally, or because they are being threatened and, um, instances of violence, um, and even, sexual violence, rape, and everything else happening, that forces their hand to try to come across illegally, because they just can't take it anymore. And there's been a lot of instances of that, a lot of, investigation done into that, and that's been cited as something that majorly happens, to people waiting to come across, attempting to come across illegally, but because of those types of situations, it forces them to attempt illegally. Things like that out going on. So this is not just like you just have a whole bunch of people just trying to come over. All these, what's it's been identified, like said that they're just criminals, druggies, dirty people. They just come over here to just flood the United States with drugs and crime and take all our jobs and blah blah blah. Like that's nonsense. That's not happening. All right, it's just absolutely not happening. Um, when it comes to drugs, um, the Biden administration and the people, the federal, you know, uh, border patrol, ICE, and everything else, they have, um, detained more fentanyl and everything than has been recorded in years. Um, so it's not like there's just loads and loads of that coming to the, free, and we're just going, yeah, yeah, take it, just go get everybody, just, kill everybody with it. That's not happening. I'm certain that there probably is some getting through, yes. But there has been a major amount of that has been captured and has been confiscated and at the borders, legally and illegally or whatever, crossings, and, um, uh, more than has, you know, at the highest rates ever. So it's being captured. And the process at the border is working for those types of things. It is working, and it is preventing it. Um, it just may not feel like it's working as well because of the high number of people coming through. And so the biggest issue is just people coming in and potentially just being released. um, and but they understand that they're given dates to come to a hearing, to state their, their asylum arguments, to stay here or whatnot. um, if they do not show up, then we have a process of them being, to be found. Now, that might not be something where they are found the next day, but if there is a process for them to be, found, and of course then they would be, pretty much, I'm sure they're immediately deported. Um, so there's not, it's not like the people are just freely coming in here and nothing's being done or nothing's happening. We don't have open borders. Um, so, a few months back, you had Biden and pretty much in the Democrats try to, and they worked along with some Republicans, with a bipartisan thing in Congress to try to push through a border policy that was the strictest, craziest border policy that has probably ever been put through Congress. Basically, Biden giving in to everything the Republicans argued that they wanted. everything, um, to the point of being able to literally shut down the border and deny asylum seekers the right to enter if the number was a certain amount. They were given, this went through, but because for certain people, certain Republicans, it was either they said it not good enough, or coincidentally, Trump came out at the same time and told them to deny it, pretty much because he wanted an argument for his campaign. He wanted to be able to use it as a campaign agenda to try to help get him elected. You know, Biden hasn't done anything on the border, so vote me. That kind of thing. Now, there's been several of them denied that was the reason why they voted against it. But let's be real. This is something that happens every time. This is something that happens with both parties every time. Whenever something major does need to happen in a certain area, whether domestically or whatever, whether you're talking about the border, talking about healthcare, talking about, whatever the case. If it's something that, especially as split as our Congress is, where you don't have no major, majority or anything, and it's kind of stringent on getting some backing from the other party to some degree. If it's something good for the American people, or something good that they actually want or say that they want, if it's a Democratic control and the Democrats try to push it through, the Republicans fight against it. And if it's a Republican in control and the Republicans are trying to put it through, the Democrats try to fight against it. Because they don't want the other one to get the credit and look good for doing something, even if it's something that they want. And it's an absolutely ridiculous practice in our Congress. And it's so frustrating and annoying because all it winds up is nothing ever gets done. So that happened. So they voted it out and it didn't go through. The harshest border policy to ever be put through, and or to attempt, to be voted on, and they just let it go. I was against it. I'm glad that it didn't get through because I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that was in it for opposite reasons that Republicans didn't like it. But anyways, but yeah, so that's it didn't get through. So what Biden then turned around and did was attempted to do, and did do an executive order, basically doing the almost the exact same thing, but without the financial part of it. Because an executive order, the president can do an executive order on actions, but he can't do it on anything that has to deal with money. Or money that has to be, or something that has to have substantial money put towards, as far as the government is concerned. The Congress has the purse. The Congress is the power of the purse. They have to put through policy in order to pay for something. The executive branch cannot just do an executive order and it actually pay for stuff. They can only just create actions. So he did it basically the whole thing minus any type of funding. So he was put it through. So basically, it come down to it being if there's more than 2,500 uh, illegal border crossings in a single day, then the border shuts down. Okay. Now, back in the um, policy that was being pushed through in Congress, it was 5,000. So not only did Biden decide that 5,000, like, not only did he take all the stuff that he could actively do from that, but then he turned around and decreased the amount from 5,000 to 2,500. He went even stronger on the policy. So I cut it in half. So if 2,500 people come across the border in a single day illegally, then the border shuts down. They're not given asylum. And it does not open up until we have 7 consecutive days of 1,500 or less. Now, I looked at a graph earlier that showed basically where 1,500, even before 2000, even before 2020, when the border crossing was a little bit more balanced, it wasn't the influx from all the stuff going on and pandemic era issues and stuff like that. 1,500 people was like still like it was like an average amount of people that were coming in. To get below 1,500 was very, very hard. 2,500, yeah, there was it would fluctuate basically between 1,500 and 2,000 roughly on average. Sometimes you would have a little bit less, but to get 7 consecutive days of 1,500 people was even hard before then. Now, you're looking at it being almost impossible with as many people that are trying to come over. So yes, it's 1,500 people has to have 7 consecutive days of that. Before they would allow for more asylum seekers, people to seek asylum. Now there are sort of loopholes in that for for children that are unaccompanied, and or people that are trafficked. Now the argument there is that that's just going to increase people, like the people that do the trafficking, to just do more trafficking. Although, like I said, there have been some policies and some sanctions put on known smugglers and stuff like that and traffickers. Of course, that's still only that's like a dent in that, but doesn't take care of it completely. So yes, that is an argument potentially that could happen, but they still are, and so that loophole is a possibility, and could just cause that to true enough. But regardless, when the executive order went into place I think it was last Tuesday or last Monday or Tuesday or whatever, because the amount of people that were already coming across, because the average was around 4,000, it had dropped to 4,000. Back in November and December, it was at its peak. It was around 8,000 people per day. But over the past 3 months, it had dropped by 50%, over 50%, and we were having more about an average of 4,000, between 3 and 4,000. And so immediately the border was shut down as soon as executive order went into effect. Um, but that hasn't stopped people from coming over. Um, it doesn't stop people from coming over. It just allows us to not allow them to seek asylum and to put them back over the border. So it's just basically an automatic deportation. Um, now, uh, when I looked up as of to, well, I guess yesterday, um, or as well, sorry, it was as of Tuesday of this week. Um, deport illegal crossings had dropped to around an average of 3,000. So they had dropped a little bit. Um, but they were still coming over. Um, some were being pushed back into Mexico or sent back immediately into Mexico, which is actually technically against the executive order. But the reason why some people they were being done that way is because the detention centers and stuff along the border do not have the capacity to hold even that amount. Um, uh, that constant, even that a constant amount coming over. And they're already full, I think, pretty much. Anyways, there's no room in them, and because this is an executive order, and there's been no congressional policy placed to allow funding to be increased, and for that, to help with building more centers or more a space to hold more people. Um, there's no more space to contain people. So they either had to be pushed back in or released. So there have been some releases. From what I understand, though, um, it was said that in the San Diego there was a um, kind of an internal memo that was, from the administration to the San Diego department, and I'm pretty sure if it went there, it probably went to all of them. Um, but basically, that the only ones that could be allowed to be released was any um, northeastern, like people from Asia, um, China, and stuff like there, whatever, from the Asian, any immigrants that were from Asia and whatnot, um, from other areas other than Latin America. There were like 8 countries all throughout Latin America. They were basically were told anyone from those countries sent back to Mexico. Anyone that wasn't from those countries could be released. Um, Now, why that is, I'm not completely sure. Um, there's probably concern there. I don't know. But that was what was being said, or reported. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But anyways, so there are still some people being released. But most of them are being sent back, from what I understand. But that's because the fact of the centers, the space centers and stuff down there to hold people till hearings and whatnot, or to be deported or whatever, are full. And there has been no more funding sent congressionally to them in order for them to build more space or to help manage the situation better or whatever. So it still needs to be something congressionally done to help with the border issue. But you've got that constant fight there where Republicans are fighting back, acting like tough is not tough enough, um, and whatever. Um, so that's the issues, and that's what's going on. That's the recent thing, um, that's happened since the executive order. Numbers have gone down a little bit, but people are still coming. But it's only been a week out. A lot of these people probably may not have even know of the order or how it's being implemented completely. May not completely understand it, so they're still trying to come over, um, or whatnot, and it will probably take a few more weeks um, uh, for numbers to really start. I mean, hopefully drop on down, um, because I mean, ultimately, they're not going to be given asylum um, until they do. So it's strategically for them. That's the only way they could even attempt at this point to get asylum is if they um, do not come. Um, but that's the current border issue going on. That's the current status. Like I said, in my opinion, all that does all these are countermeasures that are not fully implemented or not implemented in like the most efficient way. But even so, it doesn't take care of the problem at hand. It doesn't address the source issue of why people are coming to begin with. And until we start actually addressing that issue um, and building our infrastructure to help with those issues, especially the issue of migration that is going to happen anyways due to climate change. That's something that we should have already been working towards and working on, but it's most certainly something that we need to start working on, trying to build the infrastructure to handle more and more, influx of migrants coming just for that issue alone. Um, but and hopefully even the improvements that are happening in Mexico itself will start to even take some of that away as things in Mexico are getting better. Um, uh, Economically, Mexico is grown massively over the past 5 to 6 years. Um, and now with an even more, and now with its first female um, president um, that is from the same party as the well, the one that has been in power, which is kind of more of a lefty ish uh, president. Um, and from what I understand, she is even maybe more lefty, a little bit more progressive. So, who, if she continues the same policies and then even complete, even improves on some more issues, because over the past 5 or 6 years, was it AMLO or whatever? He has brought uh, quite a few million people out of poverty, raising minimum wage, and other things to help um, with people's own personal finances and economy and stuff like that. Those kinds of things have really improved all across Mexico. And if that continues to happen and that trend continues to go, then even Mexico will start to look a little bit more appealing, I guess you could say, for migrants. So there might be, even that might even start to help with some of the migrants coming from those lower Latin American countries, and they actually decide, what, I'm just going to stay in Mexico. Why bother with going to the U.S.? Now, granted, there's still going to be the majority of them come here because, it's just that American dream thing. And just coming to the Americas, not the, and then also the fact that they probably have relatives here. So, unless there's a way, of us collaborating to where they, if they decide to stay there, then we even can work to where the relatives can go there too, or whatever the case. There could be a balance there, trying to put families together, whether to be here or in Mexico or whatever. which I know that that's also a program that has been implemented by the Biden administration, um, along with the phone app, um, one app or whatever, where people can go on and put through their uh, asylum papers or whatever to to kind of fast track the process a little bit, so that once they get here, they're already kind of got an appointment, I guess you could say. Um, but yeah, those issues uh, need to be addressed. But understand that we don't have just open borders. Um, we do have an influx of people for many different reasons. These people are most of them are trying to come from areas from bad situations, and they're just trying to find a better situation for themselves. So trying to villainize them um, is just ridiculous. Um, they are humans, and they have right to you know live prosperously like anybody else. Um, so maybe stop looking at them as criminals. Um, Start realizing the nuance there. That yeah, there probably are bad apples. I mean, we know there are some bad apples. Um, but the saying, "Don't let one apple spoil the whole bunch," right? Or a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch. Majority of them are respectful, um, good, well to do, or well-meaning people just trying to seek a better life. So, anyways, that's my opinion. We need to work more towards the sources, try to make it better in those countries for people, to maybe help promote them not to have to come. Not saying that you can't come, but like things are better here. You don't have to come. Um, by improving the government situations there, economical situations there, the criminal situations there, assisting in that, um, in a legal and respectful way. Um, that's what I would prefer happening. And then let's increase our infrastructure here, which we need in many areas in our infrastructure, but our border infrastructure, spaces, um, courts, judges, um, to improve the ability to process through people seeking a path to live here, whether that's through asylum or you know regular reasons or whatever. Um, and Yeah, and realize that that's just that we are a nation of immigrants. We always have been. Um, and while our history hasn't been the best when it comes to that, and how we migrated here, um, we should always continue to strive to be better and to improve and to make it easier and better, because migration does nothing but improve our situations domestically, economically, um, everything. It improves. Um, so just think about it. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this conversation, I know it was a long video, but it was a lot to talk through. So thank you if you've stayed this around this long. You are awesome. You are the best. Anyways, subscribe, like, comment, share, all that good stuff if you would like to. And let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think about the situation at the border? And, how do you look at how it can be addressed? Um, and all that. And yeah, let me know what you think. And until next time, it's been Clear Talk. Peace. I'm out.